Hi guys.
Hello.
Hey,
Hello. Hi, Rob. Hi,
everybody.
everyone.
All right, we can probably go ahead and get started. Hendrik messaged me, say it's going to be a little late. I know this is his item here, but yeah, we can go ahead and at least get started with the SDK updates, I think. Um, so from my side, I've been mostly working on the C++ SDK this past week, getting the automation bots going. Uh, as of right now, I have an assign bot, which will basically auto assign contributors to issues. All they have to do is go in and comment/assign. The bot will assign them, and obviously making sure that the issue is actually ready for to be taken. And I've also added logic in there to basically track the amount of good first issues, beginner issues, so on and so forth, to make sure that new contributors aren't taking um, issues that are too difficult for them. So I think the limits I have right now are a new contributor needs two good first issues before they can take on a beginner. They need three beginner before they can take on an intermediate, and three intermediate before they can take on an advanced. Um, so I think that's where we're going to start with for now, and then depending on any contributors that keep taking issues and working their way up, we can maybe modify those numbers down the line. But that's where we're starting with now. So we have that. We have I've been working on uh, a bot to check DCO and GPG signatures on every commit. So I know we have these checks already in the area on the PRs where it shows all the checks, but um, I believe the Python SDK found that having a comment from a bot that actually um, clearly says what the issue is and is able to link to signing guides makes it a bit more obvious for new contributors what the issues are and what they need to work on. So I've been implementing that. Um, I started out doing it mostly just on opening or they it runs when a PR is opened, but currently I'm working to refactor that to make sure it's on every commit. So then we can continue to get that feedback. But that's primarily where we're at now. I still have several different workflows I want to implement. Want to do get the labels more involved. I think those have been very helpful, and feedback from the Python SDK as well has shown that they've been helpful. So I want to yeah, the next steps are to kind of work with those and really develop a good system here that will help alleviate some of the maintainer workload. So that's it for C++. Any other SDKs want to give an update?
Yeah, so we don't have that many updates for this time. Pretty much what happened is that we got provided an RC tag from the consensus node, and that contains the hooks, and we went ahead and tested if all our tests are passing. We had some changes that needed to be done regarding the pricing of some of the transactions, but aside from that, everything seems all right. So we needed to bump the max transaction fee in some of the tests, and we released a new beta version in the Java SDK. We decided to hold on to releasing it in other SDKs until we have a stable tag with that, because as we've already seen, the consensus node team might actually decide to change something in these APIs, and we don't want to release a stable version, or actually beta version as well, using these APIs. So we only release the Java because it's a blocker for the mirror node team. But we will hold on to it a little bit longer for other SDKs, uh, since it's not a blocker for anybody. And yeah, that's pretty much on the hooks part. Aside from that, I believe in JS SDK we have uh, we have one issue regarding uh, Windows setup. I believe someone from the new contributors faced issues with that, and we already have opened a fix. And aside from that, we've been working on TCK, which is not that interesting. And yeah, that's pretty much it, I guess.
Yeah, so for the Windows setup for JavaScript, is that because Angie, you were the one kind of trying to get that set up, right? And running
Yep.
into issues.
Yes, I am actually working on it as of this very moment, and it is not working yet. I'm still getting the same errors, so I have decided to forego Git Bash, and I am now trying in Ubuntu. So I will let you know if the PR does correct the build issues. If not, I'll just make a note.
You tried using uh the branch from the PR, right?
Yep, Venelin sent me the link for the PR this morning. So I went ahead and I've cloned it. I tried to run it in Git Bash. That it failed dramatically. It was just not good. So
That's
at that point, I just went ahead
unfortunate.
and yeah,
Uh, Maybe you can work with him tomorrow to maybe uh show him exactly what is going on and help him actually fix it, if that's okay.
yeah. Yeah, we have a meeting, I believe, Wednesday. I'm trying to remember time zones. 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I believe that's 3 p.m. UTC time. So if anyone is interested in joining that call, Sophie, I know you had said you had build issues on Mac. So we are actually discovering for the JS SDK, there are build issues across almost every system. I had somebody reach out to me saying they are not able to build it in WSL as well. So for that, we were kind of thinking to get a bit more of the team involved in that meeting to kind of go over what errors are specifically encountered and what are people able to kind of resolve on their own. So if anyone is interested in that, just let me know and I'll send the link for that.
When is the meeting, Angie?
It's 10 a.m. EST time on Wednesday, so I believe that is 3 o'clock UTC time for you. But if the I am actively working on it, it is it's actually running at this very moment. So I'm just waiting for the computer to either yell at me or congratulate us all that it has been fixed. So I will keep an update for that for everybody as soon as I know.
All right. Yeah, just message Vanillin. Do you have a Slack or where can we communicate? In
Uh,
Discord?
yeah, we don't have Slack. I don't believe me or Sophie do. I'm not sure about Sophie. But as far as I know, I believe Slack is more internal, and that's not something I have
Okay.
access to.
I guess
Okay,
you
yeah.
can also ping him in GitHub to figure out where you can have a call or just to communicate there, I guess would be the easiest.
Yeah, I've mostly been communicating with him through Discord, so that seems to be working okay. Um, I also noticed seems to work very well for the JavaScript Discord channel, so I figured I would just keep every update central to that channel. So anything new, I'll post it there, and then for the PR, I'll post a note of whether or not it did or didn't work. I'm crossing my fingers though, and really hoping that this does work.
Yeah, I think I'd like to sit in on that meeting. I don't know if I'll have much to contribute, but at least be
Yeah.
able to listen. So
Yeah,
um,
happy to. I can just ping me to remind me. That way I don't forget to send anybody the link. As of right now, I think it's just me and him. But I do believe that I think there was one other person that added me either yesterday to be part of that meeting or the day before. So if you can just ping me after this and let me know, I'll go ahead and create the meeting invite and I'll send it out now. That way everybody's got it.
yeah, sounds good. All right, so that was for JavaScript and Java. Are Rust and Go pretty much kind of on the same wavelength?
Yeah. Um, for Go, yeah, pretty much fixing the test for the hooks. And yeah, I also had I was off last week because I was sick, but there we have some user that reported an issue, and he stated that he will open a fix, but that was like last week. And I'll probably follow up on that, and I might actually fix it myself because we don't have anything with higher priority than that at this point, I guess. Um, and yeah, we also did some TCK work there in Go. It's pretty much the same in all SDKs. For actually for Rust, I believe Ivio is finishing the simple phase today or on Friday, because they were kind of on hold up until now.
Cool. Yeah, sounds good. Um, I was about to say something, but I lost my train of thought. Oh, I want to go back real quick to beta releases. Is Keith on this call? He's not. So I know Keith has brought up before. Well, he mentioned wanting a beta release for the hooks because it's a big feature. It's on PreviewNet. Like people want to um, be able to test on there. And yeah, again, it's such a big issue or a big feature. So people want to get testing done as much as possible. I know at least the JS SDK has done beta releases in the past. It sounds like Java has done one as well. Um, I guess I kind of wanted to get a better I guess understanding of people's opinions on beta releases. Are we in general fine with them? Do we want to I guess like I'm coming. I personally am not a huge fan of them. Or if we did do a beta release, at least make it known that this is a release, but it's still subject to change. Just because it's like obviously not a fully fleshed out feature yet. But I wanted to hear a bit more about opinions on beta releases and I guess do we only want to do them for specifically asked for features or I guess do we have any kind of thoughts or opinions on that?
Well, yeah, I guess it's only a matter of somebody wanting a specific thing we should publish beforehand because I don't see any other use case for us publishing a beta release. We, if we have a feature, let's say, and it's not complete uh, at some point, and the network is not adapted, we wouldn't be able to release it with a stable version. So I guess the times we've published beta versions were only to suit some clients' demands. No other case comes to my mind.
Actually, I have something to say about this point. The last couple of months, we've seen a lot of uh, situations where we are in a dependency loop with um, other projects. For example, the SDK depends on the consensus node. Uh, that's the default dependency, but uh, they've changed the way they release stuff is that they need approval from every other project in the system, which is SDKs, mirror node, and so on. And the mirror node uses the SDK, so it depends on the SDK to test to test its stuff, to have its integration tests. So we have a dependency loop where in order to break out of that, we need to do a better release in the Java SDK so that we unblock the mirror node, so that it unblocks the consensus node, so that it unblocks us to do an actual normal release. So that's a use case that has happened to us and probably will continue to happen to us quite often in the future.
Yeah, I guess maybe something I'm worried about is, yeah, obviously the dependency loop isn't great, but like I wouldn't want to get into a sort of situation or I guess kind of recurring problem where people come to us for beta releases for like every hip. 'Cause then, like for example, like we had to do a beta release now of or if we had done a beta release before of hooks, and then like for example, maybe if they wanted a beta release of 1313 or simple fees or something, like then we could start managing different beta releases that we wouldn't want to merge into main yet because they're not complete. Um, so maybe it's uh, maybe we should. I feel like we should either come up with a strategy of either, pushing back on some of these, or maybe we have to start doing like release branches or something. So then, we can just have features living on a branch, and then when it's finalized, we can finally merge it back in, and it doesn't have to, um, you know, delay any the releases of any other features or anything. Um, I mean, again, we haven't really run into this yet, but I'm just kind of thinking forward of, uh, again, like is the what I'm worried about is just people wanting beta releases for like different features like all the time, and it would just become more for us to manage and could be difficult.
For me, I see two ways out of this. The first is to change how the consensus nodes do their releases. That was changed last year, and we've done some communication uh, to prove a point that it may cause these dependency loops, but I guess the release team or whoever is responsible for that process just doesn't seem to uh, acknowledge that. And the other way out of this is to do release branches and stuff, which is something that the DevOps team and release engineering should probably set up and do because that's something that they need to approve and do. But I remember some statements from Nathan uh, way back that they specifically and intentionally moved out of this pattern. So yeah,
Nathan said that they didn't want SDKs to do this release pattern, or they just
uh,
talking about in.
I believe they wanted to remove that release branch pattern for all of the projects and to release from main, which I guess is not the case right now in the consensus node, but that was definitely the case in the SDKs because a little bit before I joined the project, maybe Georgie can say something about that. It used to be with release branches, but then it was changed to releasing from main, was it?
Yeah, I think we had like I think we had Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, we even had like a develop branch or stuff like that. I don't know if C++ ever had such, but the other SDKs at least had some. The flow was totally different there, but I can't actually remember why we changed that. Maybe because um, at that point development was going on with I guess fewer parties or something like that, but I don't remember why we moved on.
Yeah, back then skips were pretty linear and straightforward. Right now, that's not the case,
Yeah,
and
that's also true.
safety is different. So maybe it's not the best way to do things nowadays, but it requires some approvals from third parties and some additional setup, I guess.
An interesting thing about back then was that maybe we removed the need for release branches because of the following thing. Uh, we actually, when we had to implement hips, they were, I guess, for a time implemented in the consensus node. So the SDK did that after the consensus node had all its releases and stuff like that. So we decided not to have release branches. But as you're seeing right now, the case is totally different because you have HIP, which is in development from the consensus node, let's say. Somebody is depending on another somebody, and yeah, maybe such cases arise when we need to go back to release branches. But yeah, at that point, I think that the hips weren't being developed in the same time in the SDK and the consensus node and mirror node. The SDK as it should be, had to develop the feature last from those teams.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure kind of why we've deviated from that. Like, yeah, because I feel like this problem has only really came up in the past, couple months to a year. Um, yeah, before like the development was pretty linear. Yeah, again, like in an ideal situation, yeah, it's like consensus node does all their testing and is good to go. They do a release, and then we can build on top of that. But yeah, in terms of like they're doing like alpha builds and RC builds now, and yeah, want us to test against that, but obviously we don't want to you know run those versions in our CI. So yeah, I'm just trying to think of the best way to kind of to handle these situations going forward. Yeah, the main thing, like again, was just with beta releases, like it, um, like I guess they're fine as long as we can say like this is still subject to approval, like in release notes or not approval, subject to change. Um, just make that real clear, like in the release notes. Um, yeah, either that or yeah, we just have to put these features on a separate branch and just leave that until it's done.
By the way, I just came up with another argument against beta releases. Maybe it's a far-fetch or like a really low chance to happen, but uh, we have to keep in mind that when we publish a beta release, we are not only publishing it for the party, which is the mirror node. And like if you have some random dude on the internet who's following and let's say downloading beta versions and sees that a feature is broken, he could potentially try to think of some exploits with some unprepared versions of the software. So I don't know. There's a lot of arguments against doing those just in demand for unblocking somebody, but I think the whole, let's say, flow is kind of broken. So maybe that's what we should aim to fix, the whole pipeline of us delivering in the different projects and no problems would come after that.
Yeah, maybe we need to kind of coordinate with Keith a bit more, and maybe yeah, either us or him or both can uh, kind of push back on these things. It is a delicate balance, right? It's like we don't want to like block people. We want people to like to continue their development, but yeah, there's yeah, I mean that's a good reason in itself not to do beta releases on top of just like the additional tracking and everything we need to do. But also, that's another part of this too is you know it it could and should be, in my opinion, up to the maintainers of those repos if they want to do a beta release or not. So I mean, we can we just sit here and talk about reasons we should or shouldn't do, but and it's good to share those opinions, but ultimately in my head, it should just be what the maintainers think. Uh, or it should be their decision ultimately. Because yeah, I think with the beta releases we've done so far, we've really only done them for one, maybe two SDKs. I don't think anyone's ever really asked for a C++ or Rust beta release before, so maybe it's not as pertinent to them. But um, yeah, it's still good to share those thoughts, I think, though. Um, yeah, I guess any other last kind of thoughts on that?
I put a couple of questions in the chat, so I am not very informed about this pre-release thing, and just maybe want to talk about our experience with like the Python SDK kind of being a little bit external to how things are maybe working in the other SDKs. So what happens is like over the Christmas period, we did a lot of changes and we haven't done a new release. So we're on release 0.1.10. And since then, like we've changed node handling, queries, there's a whole bunch of things. And we were not able to do like a release fast enough. And the GitHub release thing doesn't let us release things retroactively. At least I haven't figured out how. So in my opinion, like we're stuck with like a really big release and we just have to go ahead with a really big release. So one of the things that we're thinking of, and Robbie had some ideas with this, is like to use AI and things to help us review it and things. Like I'm not really familiar with what pre-releases are exactly meant to do. It seems here it's more like hip focused, but I can certainly think that it would be useful to us. I mean, all our tests pass, all our unit tests, integration tests, we've tried our best to check everything and so on, but the release is still pretty big. And just having like a layer of this is open for community feedback before we kind of give it like a seal of approval would be useful, like in my perspective. But as I said, I assume that's not like how releases should be done, right? Ideally, you're like 100% confident this is ready, this is going to not cause any issues and things. So I would be open to using the pre-releases things, and I think a couple of people here on the chat have mentioned in the past, that they have left, how working on branches and merging to branches and things like that could help us like avoid this issue in the future. So I guess we don't know too much about like the best practices, and we want to improve like the efficiency and the like how well tested like the releases are and things like that, and just making sure everything goes as smoothly as possible. The second question I had is like, for pre-releases being done for hips, I guess that's like how it's been done traditionally, because it's like hash graph based originally. But in the future, I don't know, or at least I want to discuss the idea of like how much weight does one particular party have into negotiating a pre-release, especially if the pre-releases are more experimental, like hip based. Maybe those are slightly riskier and it's possible they could cause like more issues. So those are just two questions that I had.
Yeah. So I think, at least to address your second question, so I think this goes back to what I was saying about the maintainers, and it ultimately, it's their repo. They're gonna do releases how they want. Um, so again, in my opinion, it should be kind of however they want to do it. I completely forgot about pre-releases. Actually, I didn't even like remember that was a thing GitHub offered. So yeah, I think that would be a good way to signal to users that this it's not like a release, but it could be used in a way just kind of uh, exemplify that the things in this release are still subject to change, if we want to do it that way. I can't really think of another reason to do a pre-release. I think other SDKs have done those in the past. I don't remember exactly why, but I think pre-release and beta release kind of fall into the same bucket for me. Were there any different opinions on that?
Yeah, I guess we've had some cases where one user or could be, for example, in the JavaScript wants something which is an additional feature or something like that, which because of reasons we cannot be 100% sure that it works for their case, because SDKs are library that has a bunch of different configuration, etc., etc. I'll give an example. Let's say user says I cannot do like 1000 queries per second using my configuration. And you're like, all right, I can simulate that to some extent using your configuration, but the only way to really be 100% sure that the fix works or the change that you've done works is to give them a version of the SDK that has this configuration, for example, and you just do a beta release with that or pre-release and have specific communication like ask for feedback and stuff like that. But these are quite rare cases.
Yeah, I think in the sense of like, yeah, like a major ecosystem player like Kabila, you know, would be a good reason to do a pre-release. I don't think we want to do one for, you know, one one random person that we don't really know about or how or what they're doing in the ecosystem if they want a pre-release. Obviously, you know, we want to try and help, you know, whoever to be able to build on us, but you know, coming back to your point, Sophie, about how much weight we want to put into one party to do something like that. Again, to me, it just comes down to whether the maintainers see it as worthwhile or not. We answer both your questions on that, Sophie? I think you had two, right? I don't know if we answered both.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit, we're still trying to figure out if the next, I think we're not going to do 0.1.11. I think it will have to be a 0.2. We're still trying to figure out, well, that has passed as mentioned, but we're still trying to like break in and see and things. So, yeah, I would like say it's just like for us that's like a major release bump. We changed like quite a few things. So I would agree with, like, I think it was Ivan who said like I can only really think of like really small amounts of cases where some kind of pre-release would be possibly desirable. But yeah, we haven't even actually got started in the hit process at all, or maybe Angie is just kind of Angie's helping to drive that forward right now. But I think this is going to be like our first hip, and we're still working on building our relationships with our users and learning what they want. Yeah, so we don't really have a use case right now of like doing pre-releases for new hips.
Yeah, I think Angie's been working on something to track those hip progress, the hip progress for each SDK, right?
Yep, I can share the link for it if anyone's interested.
Do you just want to show it here really quick?
Oh yeah, I can screen share. Just give me 1 second. Um, should be that one. Okay. Are you guys able to see?
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome. So this is just, it's kind of like I'm gonna call it like a rough outline, But basically, this goes over what hips are and are not implemented into each of the SDKs. So for as of now, we just are starting with Python. So we went through and tried to figure out, based on issues of what people have created, what hips are and are not present within an SDK. So I want to say there used to be, for here, I'd probably say, oh, thanks, Georgie. We can expand this to include the other SDKs. However, in order to do so, I will need to go through each SDK to figure out what specifically is and is not implemented. I am thinking of also reaching out to some of the maintainers, as locating some of these is a bit tedious in the sense that not every issue is labeled in the same way. So in one sense, you have an issue that is designed to implement a hip, but in that issue, it's not very descriptive of what hip is that. I'm from Java yesterday. I had been reading over a few, and the information is present. They do link the design doc file, but at first glance, to somebody unknowing of any hip knowledge, they're looking at this from the perspective of, what is this? What hip is this? Where's the information? What am I looking at? And so for that, I kind of wanted to help mitigate that process, especially for those who are a bit more interested in hips. I kind of wanted to see if I could go in and create like a more comprehensive and detailed outline where it says, okay, here we are. Here is each hip by, you know, whatever SDK they're working on. So for Java, Java has done a very great job of just implementing a good majority. Okay, so this is actually the first one I was showing was not the one that I wanted everyone to see. That was an old version. I do apologize. Did not realize that. So this is actually a more updated version. So the idea here is that we want to go in and try to figure out, where are they at in this process? What are they doing? So if you go through the assignees, Rob and I are still working on this. The issue we are running into is that this is done by SDK. So in a sense, when you're looking at this, another person would come in and look at this and think, oh wow, Gustav is working on the implementation for Python, C++, Java, JavaScript, Swift. Like that's not true. Obviously, that person doesn't, do all of those things. So that is one of the little kinds of, I should say, kinks we are working out. And then so for some of them, like for example here, when I'm looking through, the title of this does not tell me what HIP it was implementing. So I ended up having to go in and make a separate field where it says, okay, this is actually HIP 1195. You can go through, you can see what pull requests have been submitted to complete this issue. Where are they at in terms of, are all the sub issues completed or not? If they are, that's super duper. So for Python, you can go in and set it. You have the option to determine whether it's in progress. So for HIP 1261, this one is one of those things that for Python, we could label as an in progress because we have an issue. It's there, it's assigned to somebody, and it's just that work has not been produced yet. So that would be an in progress issue. However, if we look at Java, Java is doing a wonderful job of implementing these hips. Thank you, Java team. They are who I feel should be the baseline for the rest of the hip implementations to come. So as of now, I want to expand this to include the additional SDKs. Like we're missing Rust, we're missing Go, and I believe we're missing one more. I have to double check, but that is kind of where I'm at. So eventually, what I would like to do is expand this a bit more to include the hips from the SDK collaboration hub file, as well as the hips that have been resolved already in the past that maybe we as a team are just not aware of. If there are hips that you know by your SDKs, please let me know if they are implemented. Feel free to add them here to this. I'll share this with anybody who is interested. But please do feel free to come in and add a hip here. Let us know if it's implemented in your SDK. If not, that's not a problem. It just gives me a baseline to go off of, which is really helpful because I can kind of go ahead and get a list together of what hips still need to be implemented throughout the SDKs. So Python is one of those ones where we're a little short in the hip progress. That's nothing on anyone's end. It is what it is. There are just not many people that have like the hip knowledge. Maybe they're just a little hesitant. Maybe they have the knowledge, but they don't necessarily know how to go about it the correct way. So this is kind of one of those things where I would eventually like to link it to maybe a future HIP implementation template across the SDKs where the user can go in and when they're making a HIP issue, for example, if they're making a HIP issue for the Python SDK, eventually I'm thinking we would probably want to create some sort of HIP template where, okay, what HIP are you implementing? And then they go on, they'll put in the design doc, the description, and all of that. And then at the end of it, there will be a link to our Discord channels asking for help, and then a link to this letting them know, hey, here's where we're at in the process. Can you help us along? So just it's a brief overview. Eventually, this list will become pretty extensive. As of right now, it is unfortunately just a little short. I've been working with the JavaScript SDK, mostly trying to correct the errors for setup, but I did kind of want to present this to everybody just so that everyone's aware and they are able to use it should they have that hip knowledge off the top of your heads. If not, and if you have a slight idea of, hey, I think this is implemented, but I'm not sure, that's perfectly fine. At least that just gives me a basis of knowing somebody wants to put it in here and just saying, hey, it's not here, but we want to add it. Yeah, Rob?
Yeah, this is great. I think having one spot to like track hit progress is really good. I think maybe something we could add in addition to this would be to create basically like an epic in the SDK hub, which I think potentially is you were talking about having like a good like description of the hip, what it does, all
Hmm.
that. I think if we have an issue in the SDK hub, that issue could hold all that description linked to the design docs. We're already doing the design docs in the SDK hub anyways. So we could link it. It's right there. We could put a link into the actual hip. Um, but then also from there, we can track the progress, or we can actually link the issues in each SDK to that issue. So then we can get a better idea. I mean, I think it should work in like addition to this because I think this like does a really good like you're able to just see everything from here, in a really like well laid out way. But I think having the actual issues in GitHub linking to all the SDK issues will help, better, I guess, navigate GitHub in that sense of like, all right, like I want to see exactly how far along the Go SDK is, for example. They can just go into that epic, it's linked to the Go issue. They can just click on it and boom, they're there. They can see from there like who's assigned to that issue, and anything else they want from there. Um, so again, I think something like that like could be good in addition to this. But again, I think this having this laid out like this is a really good way to just see how the progress is at a quick glance. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just want to say this is awesome.
Thank you.
And I
Thank
think
you.
it's going to help us have more clarity with like how we can smooth the hit process.
Yes, so eventually what I will do is set up something to where it links to this and then but before it'll kind of be it may kind of be a separate page where it'll go over what hips are, how do you test them, so on and so forth and then towards the end it'll it could be a small link where it says if you're looking to see hip progress, click here, you'll be able to see where the hip process is at for each SDK. I like the idea of Epic, Rob. I'm not sure how to do that, so I just may need some time. Um, but I do like that idea of having like a quick click kind of way to see the progress of this. But I'm ultimately, what I'm hoping will be to have this used throughout meetings like the TSC meeting, where when they turn more towards apologies, I have lawn equipment. I don't know if anyone can hear that. Um, but eventually, I would like some of the meetings to also use it as kind of like a way to track where they're at in the HIP approval process. So possibly expanding this layout to include the HIP progress in terms of no SDKs, nothing like that. It's just, is this HIP pending? Is it waiting for approval? Is it waiting for a vote? Something like that. I would like to incorporate that into this view as well. That way it'll be a comprehensive overview saying how, what, where, and it will also include the processes of where, what, and when. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the reasons why I haven't really pushed forward with the hips and the Python SDK is because I've never done one before. I've never like been trained in this area. I could maybe figure some out and things, but yeah, having some kind of template for like the hip description, but also having um like guidelines on like the rough things to create in the hip. Because I think the hip is mostly like, okay, we're gonna add this functionality to this and it's gonna work like that. But for like a new person working on a hip, and you need to be really clear, like, okay, I need to add integration tests and they need to do this and unit tests. And what you mentioned about like having like sort of references to other hips and just have like a bank or something where you can see this is how a hip was implemented in the Python SDK previously or the JavaScript SDK, whatever would be really, really useful. I think this would be such a good complement to the TSC calls. The TSC call does a really good job at like approving the hips and discussing the hips. And it will just kind of like help to provide like another layer where we can gain skills and confidence, and maybe one day this can help us also propose new hips and things as well, and that we are more familiar with like how they work.
Definitely. I was also taking a look towards their 2026 goals, and I was trying to figure out a way to help us achieve that. So I think by having the hip layout, having the um what's the word I'm looking for? Like having the knowledge, sorry, I'm losing my words. Having the knowledge, having that information. Eventually, what I would also like to do is maybe develop like a HIP team throughout each of the SDKs where that team goes in and they do the HIP implementation and they're the ones tracking it, keeping a note of it, making sure that new HIPs are implemented as they're coming in and stuff like that. But I also wanted to use this towards our goals of engagement and participation and training for sure. Eventually, I would like to develop this into a comprehensive training guide that not only includes what we're seeing here, but also includes information. What are HIPs? How do you get started? How do you implement them? Here's an example of this HIP being implemented in Java, for example. So that was kind of like it was kind of like two birds with one stone. I'm hoping that with the HIP implementation, with the guidance and the knowledge with this board, we'll start to see some more community engagement in the terms of where we have people wanting to work on HIPs, wanting to expand the HIP knowledge for Python. And even for other SDKs, Python, I just know we're a little bit behind in that. And again, nobody's fault. It's just there isn't there's no knowledge there saying, how do you do this? What do you do with this? How do I test this? How do I build this? How do I implement this? And so just a lot of how questions, a lot of what and where questions. So my goal was kind of trying to take on those first two goals of the 2026, increase that participation and engagement, and include some training as well. Probably a bit of an overachievement, but still looking to get there nonetheless. Yeah, Rob, go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess I just want maybe a little bit more clarity. So when a new contributor comes to, or well, I guess they wouldn't necessarily be a new contributor if they're implementing a HIP. Well, first of all, I think HIPs automatically are pretty much going to be intermediate level or higher, since it involves new APIs, new features, generally new APIs, new features, implementing unit integration tests, running with Solo, all that stuff, writing examples, so on and so forth. Um, it so you're talking about information regarding implementing the HIP, linking to design docs, linking to the HIP itself. What I so, so that would all be just be included in the issue, correct? So the issue is going to describe, the design, or again, at least link to the design, link to the HIP, provide a description of what kind of needs to be done. But also at the intermediate level, there is, some sort of freedom given to the contributors and how they want to implement it. I mean, we can enforce, like, these are the APIs that we have decided on. You must conform to this, but anything else besides that is kind of up to your purview. So I guess giving those links to the HIPs and the design doc in the issue, and even to the HIP board as well, just to see progress on other SDK HIP implementations. What more information do you think a contributor would need on top of that?
So, in all honesty, I'm still learning about HIPs. I'm not exactly entirely sure what the whole implementation and design process would look like. Ideally, when we're talking about contributors and we're talking about having them work on HIPs and things like that, I was thinking, uh, sorry, I'm reading messages. Uh, what's more like,
So
yeah.
I guess
So,
real quick, so I think kind of maybe what you're referring to more is on like the design side, like reading the HIP, understanding what the HIP is doing, implementing, and coming up with the design for that. So by the time, at least the way that I kind of see this flow going is, by the time that an issue is created in an SDK to implement a HIP. I'll see you, Mario. Thanks for joining.
thanks.
But by the time an issue is created in an SDK to implement that HIP, the design is pretty much already decided upon. That's that's what we do in the SDK hub. That's where we come up with the design doc and figure out the best way to implement it, or at least in the public facing way, like the define the public APIs, and what they're doing. So maybe I see what you're saying. So like the wanting to learn more about the HIP process in general, and kind of how we translate those HIPs from HIP to SDK implementation. I think that's primarily done through the SDK hub. So maybe we can focus a bit more on that side there. Maybe because the designs that we've done have been pretty ad hoc. Like, we don't necessarily create issues for those in SDK hubs, which is maybe something we need to start doing. Create an issue to come up with a design, and then obviously the PR for that issue would be the design itself. But maybe in those issues is where we can expand a bit more on the hip process because I is again this is just my opinion, so I'm open to different interpretations. But by the time that an issue is created in an SDK, the design is already decided upon, so it should just be any contributor can come along, read the issue, and they know what to do, and they have their links to the design doc and hip. Um, am I kind of understanding what you're saying, right? And I guess kind of, do you understand what I'm saying?
I think so. So, I'll backtrack a minute. My goal isn't to take away the work that the SDK Hub is doing in the sense of the design docs that they're creating and the implementations going forth. My my path is after all of that. So after the hip is said and done, I'll just use 1261 as an example. So after 1261 is implemented, a new contributor comes in. They are seeing a node in the Python SDK somewhere, maybe in an issue that they're claiming. We'll call it an advanced issue. And this issue is saying, okay, we have approval for HIP 1261. We want to implement it into this SDK. And so for this would be obviously labeled as an advanced issue. This would be for somebody who's done a good bit in the SDK. They've made some good issues, some good contributions. They've done some intermediate work. So my thinking, if we wanted, I should preface this by saying, if, for example, we wanted to have newer contributors working on hips, that's fine. I think that we would need to kind of maybe lighten the load in that scope where it's just something very minimal that they
Yeah,
are like correcting or
sorry
yeah,
to jump
very
in.
yeah, something small just to kind of get them familiar with the hip code, with the hip in general. So, for example, maybe there's a typo in one of the hip tests, or maybe there's like a small test that they could include to fix the hips. Like for one of the issues, there's an issue here where it says implement testing for hip 1261, and in the issue description it says you're not implementing 1261, you're just adding a test. So that is kind of the direction I wanted to follow. It's after the SDK hub, after everything is all said and done, and we have the votes, the HIP's approved, and we want it to be present in the SDKs. My thinking is that I'm approaching this from an advanced contributor standpoint, just because in my mind, I'm thinking that with hip knowledge, you kind of want to have an advanced understanding in the sense maybe you haven't implemented one fully on your own, but you can at least say, okay, I know what these are. I know what this hip is. I understand it a good bit. Maybe I can work on this issue. Bye, Sophie. Thank you. And yeah. They are pretty elite. They're pretty advanced. So as of right now, the scope for what we have would just be for our advanced users in the sense that they've done the work for the SDKs. They know what the code looks like. They've made some good, valuable contributions. So I'm approaching this as an advanced issue where that issue template will include the links to the design doc. It'll include links to the SDK collaboration hub. It will include the links to Discord channel and basically more or less just include any necessary information that that person would need to get started with the issue. If we're talking about it from a beginner perspective, which is eventually the path that I would like to go down to kind of, pull in some new contributors, pull in some people who are maybe interested about it. They don't necessarily know what it is, but they think it could be interesting, something more blockchain related. I wanted to approach this in the sense where I want to meet the community goals, and I don't want to limit contributors just because they don't have the knowledge. That's why I also had a proposal of trying to implement HIP guidance where it says, okay, here's what a HIP is, here's what they do, here's a link if you're interested in seeing the progression, so on and so forth. That way, not only are we getting those advanced people, but we're also keeping the beginners, because if the beginners are able to do things like small issues just related to the hip, eventually they'll be coming to a point where it's like, okay, hey, I want to do something more advanced with a hip, but I want to write a test, or I want to implement it, or like work on the design doc and stuff like that. So if I'm making a long story short, I'm approaching this with an advanced contributor mindset. When that's fulfilled in the sense when I come to a point or when the team has come to a point where we're happy with that, eventually I would like to shift it to making issues geared towards hips that are not so advanced or elite, but are manageable in the sense that, okay, hey, a new contributor can do this, or a beginner contributor, intermediate, so on and so forth. Does that, I hope that answers your question. I didn't mean to run on forever. I
No,
apologize.
I think we could continue this conversation for a while, and it's already 6 minutes. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think in general, I understand like what you're trying to do. You're trying to make hips just in general more accessible to everyone. Like
Hmm.
some we can find some ways to even get beginner level contributors to contribute to a hip in some way. Um, I guess a couple things I want to talk through a bit more, and maybe we can push this to the next call. Is in my opinion a hip implementation, a full hip implementation includes the uh, obviously the the implementing the APIs, but in addition to that, the full unit and integration test suite that goes along with that hip, and examples. Um, I don't think we want to merge something, a hip, especially one that offers new features, without having it fully tested first. Um, I think I'm of the opinion that the all the tests should be a part of the same PR that the implementation is in. So with that kind of mindset, I think it could be a bit challenging to find ways to make hips more accessible. I mean, I'm sure there's ways like um, we could add more tests like after the fact, but um, yeah, I would want to think through that a little bit more and talk through it a little bit more because again also coming from an advanced contributor mindset, um, having the advanced level is already like you are fully comfortable doing like major like architecting like in this SDK. Like if we want to add another like elite level or something above that, great. um and maybe that, like, again, that's something we can talk about a little bit more. But then if we add another level, then we'll have to, um, I guess, in a way, redo our other levels as well. I mean, not like a full redo, but um, uh, it kind of re-talk about where everything else would go. Because in my mind, advance has always been like you could rewrite this well, maybe not rewrite this whole thing, but like your understanding of it is tip top. um but yeah, yeah, I guess do you kind of understand where I'm coming from there?
Yeah, if I understand correctly, it seems it's you're looking for everything to be more comprehensive when it comes to the HIP implementation. So not only implementing it, but the tests that go alongside with it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I also, and
Okay.
like, just yeah, just I mean, you could just think about like a smaller feature too. It's like, you want to make sure that feature works before, even if it's just like, one API, like you want to make sure it works. So it's like you would write a test for it right then and there while you're implementing it. So I don't think hips should, you know, be any different, even if they are, large. Um, but yeah, I do want to make them more accessible. I think I'm with you on that. I would just want to, yeah, we would need to think of other ways how, um, or maybe, I mean, because like not all hips are like really big. Like 1313 is really just like adding one API to the transaction class and writing like a test or two. Like that itself could probably be a beginner issue. It's just adding one API and adding like three tests. Um, so in that way, it also kind of depends on what the hip is too. Like to like 1261 is like pretty big hip, so that's just based on its size purely. Like that's going to be like intermediate or advanced. And then hooks is like even bigger than that. So um, yeah, yeah, we can make hips accessible. I think it will depend on the hip though. Um, yeah, that's just
Yeah.
my thought.
Yeah, my example was just something I had seen the other day. I think it was something I may or may not be working on at this point. Everything just blends together. Um,
Mhm.
but one of the issues was to just necessarily implement the tests for one of the hips. I can't remember off the top of my head which one it was. But that was where I had gotten the idea from and kind of separating it out. Now, I do, of course, understand that this isn't going to be doable for every hip in the sense that some of them are going to be a bit more involved and just require the tests to be submitted in that implementation PR. My thinking is just for like other hips in general, would this be possible? How could I make this as friendly and as welcoming as I could possibly make it without the feeling of thinking, oh, this is way too advanced for me. Maybe this is something I shouldn't be doing. So that was kind of my approach. I kind of just wanted to create it in a more welcoming and open environment by giving the knowledge of what's here, what isn't here, what are hips, how do we do them, and stuff like that was kind of the it was kind of the general notion I wanted to go in. And I also had wanted to kind of use this as a way to help community members. The one of our other calls was to from our community members when we were talking about goals, some of them had wanted to see more blockchain DLT work. So my thinking is like, well, great, we can totally do this. We have hips, we can implement. Awesome, awesome. But when I was going through and I just kind of started seeing, okay, hang on, wait a minute. Some of my community members, they're not as advanced as some of the other ones that I talked to. So for them, I was kind of approaching this with their kind of mindset in the sense of, okay, what do I need to know to work on this, or what do I not know? Where can I learn this information? How do I know what's here? How do I know what they're even talking about, so to speak? So that was just kind of my, I guess, standpoint and point of view in the sense of how can we make it a less, not for lack of a better word, daunting task in a more open and welcoming, friendly environment. I did like Sophie's idea of possibly doing a hip call. I think this would be a good idea to get maintainer input as well, in the sense that do they feel for one hip that it should all be implemented together, or could we possibly take another hip and kind of like section it out to make some small issues for those new and beginner contributors, so on and so forth. But that was something that was a little, I should say, further down the line because I my focus again was just more on the advanced users who are here and they want more advanced work, but they don't necessarily maybe know what to do or where to start. So this was me kind of giving them the foundation that they need to get started, and just also so they could see that, hey, we are working on these goals. We're working on trying to implement what it is you want to see. So, but I know we are a little over. I'm not sure if we should attend the next meeting or not. Um, but yeah, that was
Yeah.
just kind of my thought process there.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, again, we maybe we can talk a little bit more about this next Monday. I did want to go to that mentorship meeting though, just to figure out a
Yeah,
little bit more about it. So, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, thanks for bringing this up. Yeah, I'll put it on the agenda for next week. We can continue talking about it a little bit more.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, see you, Angie. Bye.
Bye.